Welcome back to my channel, folks. And if you have entered my shop before here on YouTube, you're going to notice something extremely different this time. Hello, Buck. That's right. I'm relocating. This is my final project in this shop. All that's left is to put a finish coat on this bad boy. I will be entertaining for you in the near future in the new shop, so don't forget to subscribe so you get notified. And I hope you enjoy the build. We're going to start this project with some walnut at the table saw. We have our table saw set at 40.2 degrees and ripping this walnut on edge, as that's where our figuring is at and what's going to be exposed. We're going to end up with a 49.8 degree bevel rip. Moving on to our miter box, which we have set up with a pinch stick, which helps keeps vibration down as we're cutting, so we end up with a smooth cut. We have altered the saw to achieve a 54.7 degree bevel on this. The angle is at 30 degrees. Here you can see what is going to be the pieces for our skeleton. With three of them together, there it is. We'll of course sand out the burn marks. This project is a lead off of one of my previous projects, the stellated icosahedron, which is essentially 20 tetrahedrons on the face of one icosahedron. In this one, we're not going to carry the tetrahedrons to a point. We're instead going to invert them on themselves and make a skeleton. We're going to continue by gluing 5 of these groups of 3 together. And we're going to do this 3 times to achieve 1 lid, 1 base, and 1 bottom of vessel. We'll then have 10 more pieces of these groups of 3 to achieve the walls of our vessel. The beauty of this skeletal frame assembly is that we end up with parallel clamping surface. And this gives us a great glue joint to base the rest of the build off of.
So this is the important part of this. Okay.
Before we glue the walls onto our vessel, as we won't be able to do this later on, we're going to drill the bottom of the vessel to accept a woodworm in it on the chuck. We're going to align this carefully with the tailstock so we don't end up with a wobble from center. After we like alignment and we're snugged up onto the chuck on the headstock, we'll then remove our live center off a tailstock and bring up a drill bit to core out a mortise to accept a stem to go from vessel to our base. I am so glad we had a sharp bit to do this with, as we're cutting through the points of these tetrahedrons to a solid surface to create this mortise. Once we like it, we'll move on to gluing the walls on this vessel. We're going to start filling our skeletal frame with some hard maple. And if you're wondering about the numbers that I came up with for all this, they go as follows. And you can take note here at the table sauce to start with, we're ending up with a 49.8 degree bevel rip on our board. This is to create the intersection bevel from the face of a tetrahedron to an icosahedron. Followed here at the miter box, you can see we are now moving our stop for the shorter piece to a designated length, but we have the 54.7 degrees. The 54.7 degree bevel is to create the intersection from face to face of the tetrahedron. Finally, the angle at the miter box here is at 30 degrees. The 30 degrees is to create the equilateral triangle, which both the tetrahedron and the icosahedron share as a face, and that will be what brings the two together. The glue up here is much the same as the skeletal frame, with the exception that the tape is only temporary to aid in the insertion of all three pieces at once. It is then immediately removed for clamping. We're going to finish filling our skeletal frame with this darker straight grain walnut, which we'll also use for our finial too. On the finial, we left one side open as an attachment point to the lid. Now we're going to drill a mortise into the base, the same as the bottom of the vessel. Why I didn't do both of them at the same time is beyond me, but here we go.
Blue cleanup now.
We're now ready to flatten the bottom of our base and create a dovetail mortise for the chuck.
Nice. All right. Like that. That's there. That's through there.
Yeah, here's another one of those moments of why'd I do it this way? I could have turned this around and mounted the base to the chuck and not have taken the chance of losing it off the lathe. But things worked out in the end anyways, so cheerio.
This one out there.
Without the use of a steady rest to hollow this out, I ended up with an immense amount of harmonic vibration happening. We did manage to persevere and get it hollowed out though. Unlike the base and bottom of vessel, we're going to make this woodworm hole right in the top of the lid here. This will then, in the future, be bored out to accept the stem for our finial. To prevent damaging these fine points on these tetrahedrons, we are going to use a closed cell piece of foam, 2 pieces of foam here, to go against the chuck, in between the chuck and lid. I'll then just cut off the excess with a pair of scissors and we'll continue on. We're going to use some hard maple this time for the stem to contrast between the vessel and the finial. We're going to mount this directly to the headstock with the use of some foam. And voila. All that's left is to glue it into the lid. Here we are. My final project from my Colorado workshop in the future site of my New Mexico workshop. I gotta say, this project was extraordinarily fun. I enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you for joining me. This piece, I hope you enjoyed. And we'll subscribe and see future pieces made right here at this point. The inside is just marvelous. All right. All right, Buck. Till next time, y'all stay safe out there.